My name is Estelle Pruitt. I am 67 years old, and until last spring, I had already decided the worst surprise of my life was behind me. I was wrong. Welcome back to Brave Mom Stories, where the women who were underestimated finally get to tell their side. Leave me a comment and subscribe before you go. Now let me tell you what happened. For 32 years, I sat inside a federal courthouse in Louisville, Kentucky, my fingers moving across a stenotype machine, while lawyers argued and witnesses swore on Bibles, and judges reminded everyone what the truth was supposed to mean. I was a court reporter. I took down every word spoken in that room, every denial, every carefully worded admission, every half-truth dressed up to sound like something else. After 3 decades of that work, I learned one thing above everything else. The people most likely to deceive you are the ones who have already practiced doing it, somewhere quieter, somewhere they believed no one was keeping a record. I retired at 63. My husband Vance had already been sick for a year by then, and I wanted to be home. Our house on Callaway Mill Road in Milford, Kentucky, is a white frame ranch we bought 28 years ago for less than $80,000 and spent the better part of a decade fixing up together, one room at a time. Vance was an electrician. He rewired the whole place himself. The summer Curtis turned 12, working weekends with a radio in the driveway and a thermos of coffee that always went cold before he remembered to drink it. We paid off the mortgage 9 years before he died. Vance passed 4 years ago this November, just after his 68th birthday. Pancreatic cancer, 7 weeks from diagnosis to the end. Some things in this world do not give you much time to prepare, and that was one of them. I sat with him at the hospital until there was nothing left to sit for, and then I drove home alone to a house that still had his reading glasses on the end table and a half-finished crossword puzzle in the kitchen drawer. I kept the house. I kept his truck in the driveway for 11 months before I finally sold it, which I still do not entirely regret. I kept my own bank accounts, my own name on the deed, my own routines, and my own counsel. I am not a woman who needs managing, and I never have been. But I made one additional private decision about my finances that I did not share with anyone in my family. Not even Curtis. Not because I was secretive by nature. Because 32 years of watching people lie under oath had taught me that what you keep quiet is often what you keep safe. My son Curtis is 45. He runs a small residential contracting business out of a shop on Route 18. Pruitt Home Services, blue lettering on white vans, 2 full-time employees, and a rotating third depending on the season. He works hard. He has always worked hard. I have never once had reason to question his character directly. His wife Shauna is 43. She manages the front office for a group of orthopedic surgeons 2 counties over. She is organized, efficient, and very good at understanding what things are worth. Shauna and I have been cordial for 15 years. Not warm, cordial. She remembered my birthday and my coffee preference and always brought an appropriate hostess gift. But there was a register underneath the pleasantness that I had noticed for years without naming it, the way you notice a sound in a house that is not quite right, but never quite loud enough to act on. About 2 years into my widowhood, Shauna started making comments. Just in passing. Estelle, a woman living alone out here, the winters can really get long. Or, Curtis and I drove by one of those 55-plus communities over in Hardin County. It looked really lovely. We just thought you might want options. Or, once at Thanksgiving while she was helping me clear the table. This house is so much square footage for one person. You could really do a lot with the equity. I laughed it off every time. I told her I had more square footage than I needed and precisely the right amount of quiet. But I noticed. Once I start noticing, I tend not to stop. My granddaughter Avery is 22. She is Curtis and Shauna's only child, a nursing student at Western Kentucky University, working 2 jobs and calling me every Sunday evening without fail. She tells me the truth even when she would rather not. She has done that since she was 9 years old and informed me that my potato salad was too heavy on the mustard. She was right about that. I adjusted the recipe. Last December, Avery came home for winter break and drove out to see me on a Tuesday afternoon with a Wise security camera still in the box and a screwdriver in her jacket pocket. She set it up on my bookshelf in the living room in under 20 minutes, tilting the lens toward the back sliding door before I had finished making the coffee. "Grandma," she said, handing me her phone so I could see the live feed on the app, "you had that fall in October, and I am not sleeping at night, knowing you don't have eyes on who comes and goes." I told her I was perfectly fine. "I know you are," she said, "humor me anyway." She showed me how to check the recordings, how to pull up the live view, how to adjust the volume on the audio. "The microphone is more sensitive than you'd think," she said, while she was kneeling on my hardwood floor adjusting the angle. "Picks up everything inside the room and honestly a good bit outside too, if that back door is cracked open at all." I thanked her. I meant to remember to check it regularly. And then, honestly, I mostly forgot it was there, the way you forget about the smoke alarm until the day the battery dies. Shauna came by on a Thursday afternoon in March. She called from the driveway rather than before she left her house, which I noted without mentioning. She had a folder tucked under her arm and a smile that was working slightly too hard to stay relaxed. "I wanted to drop off your Medicare supplement renewal before the deadline got away from us," she said, already inside and setting the folder on my kitchen table. "The office has been absolutely crazy this week. I figured I'd stop by in person so nothing gets lost in the mail." I appreciated the thought. Genuinely. I had been putting off insurance paperwork for nearly 3 weeks. Shauna poured herself a glass of water and leaned against my counter while I pulled out the chair and sat down. I reached for my reading glasses by habit and remembered half a second later that I had left them on the bathroom sink that morning. I had cleaned the lenses and set them there and simply walked away. I told her I needed to go grab them from the bathroom. "Oh, it's really just the same as every year," she said, flipping to the second page with her fingernail already pointing to a line near the bottom. "I went through the whole thing already. You just need to sign the tab spots." I have renewed that Medicare supplement every year for a decade. I know how many signatures it takes. This folder had more pages in it than it should have. But Shauna was already moving to the next tab, speaking in the pleasant, practiced voice she used for everything she had already decided. And I told myself I was being unreasonable. This was my son's wife sitting in my own kitchen, trying to help an old woman with her paperwork. I signed where she pointed. 4 times, then a 5th, then once more on a page near the back that felt thinner under my pen than the ones before it. On that last page, my hand paused for just a moment, the same way it had paused 100 times in that courthouse when a transcript didn't quite sit right, and I almost asked her to read me the heading at the top of the page before I put my name to it. I didn't ask. She was already closing the folder. She said she would get me copies. She said not to worry about a thing. She was in her car and backing out of my driveway in under 25 minutes. I stood in the doorway and watched her taillights disappear around the bend at the end of Callaway Mill Road. Something sat wrong beneath my ribs, the same feeling I used to get in the courtroom when a witness gave an answer that was technically responsive but not actually true. I had learned not to ignore that feeling. I had also, over the years, learned that some feelings have to wait for the right moment to be useful. I told my neighbor Phyllis about it 3 days later over the fence line we have shared for 20-some years. Shauna brought insurance paperwork and had me sign in 4 or 5 places. I told her. Felt fast. I didn't have my glasses. Phyllis pulled a weed from around her mailbox post. "Daughters-in-law are always in a hurry," she said. "Mine's the exact same way." She probably had appointments all afternoon. I told myself the same thing. I was a busy woman's errand stop, nothing more. I never did receive those copies. 3 weeks later, on a gray Thursday afternoon, I had dozed off in my armchair by the back window. The television was on low, the kind of comfortable murmur that pulls a person under on a slow afternoon. I don't know what time exactly my phone buzzed on the side table with a notification from the Wise app. Motion detected back door area. I nearly ignored it. Nothing outside was moving except the wind in the yard maple. But some instinct I cannot fully explain made me pick up the phone and open the feed. The living room looked still and empty on the screen, but through the glass of the back sliding door, I had left it, cracked 2 inches for the air. I could see Shauna on my back porch. She must have come around from the driveway while I was asleep. She had her back half turned toward the door and her phone to her ear. She was not speaking quietly enough. I turned the audio on. Her voice came through muffled, then clearer when I pressed my thumb to the volume button and held it. I turned it all the way up. "She has no idea what she signed," Shauna was saying. "She didn't even have her glasses on." I kept the pages moving, and she just signed where I pointed. A pause. Her sister Tamsin on the other end. A voice I recognized from its tone even when I couldn't catch every word. Shauna laughed, short and certain. "Tamsin, the POA covers everything. The accounts, the house, all of it. Once it's processed and I'm the agent of record, we can move before she even thinks to look at what she signed. You already have the buyer lined up. The market is right now, not 6 months from now." I set the phone face down on my knee. I sat in my armchair in the quiet of my own house, for a long moment the television still murmuring the afternoon news behind me. I did not cry. I did not call out the back door. I sat very still, the way I used to sit at my stenotype machine when testimony took a turn that required absolute precision, and I let everything I had just heard settle into the same place I always kept what mattered most: clear, exact, unembellished. I got up. I walked down the hall to my bedroom closet and lifted a fireproof document box off the upper shelf. Blue steel, combination lock. Vance bought it for our passports and the original deed, and the things a person does not want to lose in a house fire. I opened it. 2 years ago, 8 months after Vance passed, I sat across the desk from Walter Grimes. Walter has been the family attorney for 19 years. He handled Vance's estate, then my updated will, and then one afternoon I asked him a different kind of question altogether. I said, "Walter, if someone in my family decided to help themselves to what I had built while I was still here and breathing, what would actually stop them?" He leaned back in his chair. He spent the better part of an hour explaining a revocable living trust. I asked every question I could think of: whether a power of attorney could override it, whether a family member could access my accounts without becoming a trustee, whether I could change the terms if I wanted to. Walter answered everything without a hint of impatience. He told me the trust held legal title to every asset I transferred into it: the house, my savings account, my investment account at Edward Jones. While I was alive, I was my own trustee. Every decision was mine. A durable power of attorney over me personally would not make someone else the trustee of that trust. Only I could appoint a successor trustee, in writing, in front of a notary, with full understanding of what I was doing. He slid a yellow legal pad across the desk. He said, "Think about who you trust most, not who you feel obligated toward, but who you actually trust." I wrote Avery's name without hesitating. The trust document was in the blue box on my closet shelf. I had not mentioned its existence to a single person in my family, not to Curtis, not to Shauna. I had told only Avery that if anything ever happened to me, she should call Walter Grimes before she called anyone else. She had not asked me why, and I had loved her for it. I sat on the edge of my bed and held the document and felt something in my chest go very quiet and very steady. Whatever Shauna had slipped into that folder, whatever I had signed in my own kitchen without my glasses, could not reach what was in this box. The accounts she wanted to move were legally titled to the Estelle Pruitt Revocable Living Trust. A personal financial power of attorney naming Shauna as my agent did not make her the trustee. She had no standing over those assets, not legally, not under any reading of it. What she had done was still fraud. It was simply fraud that had nowhere to go. The following Monday morning, I drove to Walter's office above the hardware store on Main and set the trust document on his desk alongside a description, written in my own hand, of every detail I could remember about the day. Shauna brought the folder, the number of pages, the speed, the broken routine of being told not to worry about the fine print, the glasses on the bathroom sink. Beside that, I played him the recording from the Wise camera on my phone. Walter listened without speaking. He read the documents twice. Then he looked up. "What you're describing is fraud in the execution," he said. "You were told you were signing one thing while actually signing something entirely different. A court will set that aside without much difficulty. And as for the trust," he tapped the certificate. "She has no access to these assets regardless." He paused. "There is something else you need to hear clearly. In Kentucky, financial exploitation of an adult over 60 is a specific criminal statute. What Shauna described in that recording, knowingly obtaining your signature on a PO through misrepresentation, with the intent to liquidate your assets, falls squarely within it. That is not something I say loosely." I asked him what he recommended. He reached for a legal pad. "We write a letter to Curtis first," he said, "before anything else goes further." I told him the same thing I had been telling myself since the afternoon on the porch. I was not trying to punish my son. I was trying to find out whether he was a man who would do the right thing when given the chance, or one who would need a judge to make the choice for him. Walter sent the letter on his own letterhead 3 days later. It stated the facts in plain language: the fraudulent POA, the recording, the Kentucky Elder Exploitation Statute, the complete legal ineffectiveness of the document given the existing trust. It gave Curtis 10 business days to voluntarily execute a formal revocation before Walter would file to void the POA through the courts and refer the recording to the Attorney General's Elder Exploitation Unit. Curtis called me from his van 4 days after the letter arrived. I could hear the engine idling, and I could hear something else underneath it. The particular sound of a man who has spent 4 days deciding something he should have decided on the first day. "Mom," he said, "tell me what you need me to do." I said, "Tell me first what you knew." A long silence. "She told me she was going to help get your paperwork organized," he said finally, "that it was overdue, and you'd been putting it off. I didn't press for details. I should have." "You should have," I agreed. "I'm sorry, Mom." "I know you are," I said. "You still have 6 days." He came for Sunday dinner alone that week. We ate pot roast and talked about his crew and whether the rain had been bad for the spring jobs, and he stayed until nearly 8 in the evening, which was 2 hours longer than usual. When he finally stood in the doorway with his keys in his hand, he looked at me for a moment without speaking. "I love you," he said. "I love you too," I told him. "And both of those things can be true at the same time as the rest of this." He nodded. He left. Walter called the following Wednesday to tell me the revocation had arrived by certified mail, signed and dated, with no conditions attached. I did not know what that decision cost Curtis at home. I had some idea later, from things Avery mentioned carefully, choosing her words the way a person chooses their steps on unfamiliar ground. Shauna had found out, and the house on their street had been loud in a way that the neighbors could hear through closed windows. Avery had sat in her childhood bedroom with her pharmacology textbook open to a page she had not turned in 40 minutes. Curtis's 45th birthday fell on the 3rd Saturday in May. I had already planned dinner at the house, same as every year: pot roast, roasted potatoes, a cake from the bakery on 5th Street. Shauna called me the week before with a warmth in her voice that I recognized as the voice she used when she believed a conversation was already going her way. She said she thought the birthday would be a nice opportunity for everyone to sit together, calmly, to talk about things like a family. I told her I was very much looking forward to it. That Friday evening, I laid out my good tablecloth and set the document box on the chair beside my place at the table. I put my reading glasses in my cardigan pocket. I checked the Wise camera on my bookshelf and confirmed the audio was on and the recording was running. I made the pot roast and went to bed before 10 o'clock and slept 8 uninterrupted hours for the first time since March. Curtis and Shauna arrived at 1. Avery had driven down the night before and slept in her old room down the hall. My neighbor Phyllis came by at noon with a peach pie and stayed, because she always stays and I have always let her. We moved through appetizers pleasantly enough. Avery talked about her clinical rotation in the ER. Phyllis told a story about her sister's drive from Lexington that somehow involved a wrong turn and a livestock auction. Curtis seemed quiet, in the way a man is quiet, when he knows something is coming and has already decided to let it. Shauna set her fork down. She looked at me across the table with the composed, reasonable expression I had seen her use at family gatherings for years. The one that said she had already worked through this conversation in her mind and knew where it ended. "Estelle," she said, "I think we all know it's been a complicated few months, and I want to say, sincerely, that everything I have ever done has been because I care about this family's stability and your well-being." I folded my napkin. I took my glasses out of my cardigan pocket and put them on. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "I have something I'd like to share as well, since we're talking openly." I reached down and set the document box on the table. 3 years ago, I said, I established a revocable living trust with my attorney, Walter Grimes. I opened the box. My house, my savings account, my investment accounts at Edward Jones, all of it was transferred into that trust. While I am living, I am the sole trustee. Avery is named as my successor. Shauna had gone very still. "The power of attorney you had me sign in March," I continued. "The document you told me was my Medicare supplement renewal. It covered assets held inside a trust. Even if you had obtained my signature honestly, it would not have given you access to those accounts. A personal POA does not supersede a trust document. Walter has confirmed this clearly." I set the second paper on the table. Walter also filed the formal revocation with the county. Curtis signed it 3 weeks ago. Shauna turned to her husband fast enough that her water glass shifted on the tablecloth. "You signed it," she said. It came out low and flat, the way a statement comes out when someone already knows the answer and is furious about it. Curtis looked at his birthday cake. He looked up. I watched him hold the line he had drawn for himself 3 weeks earlier when he put his signature on that revocation without being asked twice. "My mother didn't deserve what happened," he said. "I'm not going to fight her over it." Shauna stood. She did it with the controlled precision of a woman who has decided that composure is still possible if she moves quickly enough. "I never intended any harm," she said. Her voice was steady. "I was trying to give this family a path forward." I looked at her the way I had looked at witnesses for 32 years, not unkindly, but without the softness that invites a revision of the testimony. "You were on my back porch on a Thursday afternoon in March," I said. "You told your sister Tamsin that I didn't have my glasses on and didn't read what I signed. You told her you had a buyer ready and that the timing was right now, not in 6 months. My camera picked up all of it." The color left her face completely. I did not raise my voice. I had not raised my voice at a witness in 32 years of transcription either. "A complaint has already been filed with the Kentucky Attorney General's Elder Exploitation Unit," I said. "That investigation moves forward regardless of what happens at this table today. The individual who witnessed that POA document was not present in my home when I signed it. Her attestation will be reviewed separately." Avery sat beside me with her hands folded in her lap, very still, waiting. "I am not pursuing criminal charges personally," I said. "I want you to understand that I made that choice deliberately. Avery deserves a mother who is not sitting in a courtroom. Curtis deserves the space to decide what kind of marriage he wants without me making that decision for him." I let that sit. "But I need you to hear this clearly, Shauna. Mercy is not the same as forgetting. Do not ever make that mistake with me again." She picked up her purse. She walked through my kitchen, with her shoulders straight and her chin level, and the front door pulled shut behind her hard enough to rattle the good china in the hutch. The dining room went quiet in the particular way a room goes quiet after something that had been held at tension for a long time finally releases. Avery was the first one to move. She came around the table and put both arms around my shoulders, her chin resting on top of my head, and she held on for a moment without saying anything. "Happy birthday to Dad," she said finally into my hair, and also happy everything to you. I patted her arm. I told her that camera she bought me turned out to be the most useful gift I had received in 4 years. Phyllis reached across the table and squeezed my hand without a word, which is exactly the kind of neighbor she has always been. Curtis stayed at the table. He did not follow his wife to the door, and he did not move toward me either. He sat looking at the revocation document, still lying face up between the plates, a man who had won something and paid for it in the same afternoon. I did not go easy on him. I also did not send him home. "There is cake," I said, looking around at what remained of the birthday dinner. "Let's cut it." We sat at that table until evening. Curtis, Avery, Phyllis, and me, and the conversation was quiet and ordinary and honest, in the way conversations are honest when nothing is being performed for anyone's benefit anymore. Curtis came for dinner the next 2 Sundays alone. We did not discuss Shauna, because that was never mine to carry for him. By the 3rd Sunday, he mentioned they had started marriage counseling. I told him I was glad. I meant that without reservation. Avery stayed the whole weekend after the birthday. We watched movies, and she fell asleep on my couch by 9 o'clock, the same way she has been falling asleep on that couch since she was 7 years old. I sat up with the lamp on and watched her for a while. I thought about a 22-year-old woman who bought her grandmother an $80 camera and installed it on a bookshelf and never once asked what I might need it for. The Attorney General's office sent a written confirmation of the investigation in June. Walter says it will take time and that I have already done everything required of me. I bought a second pair of writing glasses, and I keep them on the kitchen table now, beside my coffee cup, where I will never again have to walk away from a piece of paper to go find them. The Wise camera is still on my bookshelf. I check the feed every morning, the same way I check the weather and the temperature, and whether there is anything I need before I start the day. Some habits form late and hold better for it. What I know now, that I did not know until that March afternoon, with a folder on my table and a pair of glasses in another room, is that the preparation matters more than the confrontation. The trust I signed in Walter's office 2 years before any of this began was the thing that actually protected me. The camera only let me hear what was already in motion. But without that quiet afternoon in Walter's office, without writing Avery's name on a legal pad and meaning it, the hearing would not have been enough. I spent 32 years making sure nothing went unrecorded. It turned out that habit had more uses outside a courthouse than I had ever anticipated. The people who truly want to protect you will hand you your reading glasses before they hand you a pen. The ones who don't are counting on you not noticing the difference. I spent my whole career noticing.